paper 223/1, Christian Religious Education, Senior 3 class. I am going to be handling theme 3, that is life. And under life we talk about happiness. Now we begin with a definition of happiness. What is happiness? Happiness is the feeling of joy, pleasure, excitement, and satisfaction by a person or a group of individuals. How is happiness expressed? So we look at the way happiness is expressed, and happiness can be expressed in the following ways: through singing, hugging, dancing, screaming, kissing, smiling, crying, laughing. So those are some of the ways people express happiness. Some people, because of excitement, maybe at graduation. I've seen occasionally people crying because of happiness, because of what God has done for them, because of an achievement they have registered. Happiness differs from age to age, person to person, and from situation to situation. Therefore, this means that what makes a child or a youth happy may not make an elderly person or an adult happy. To a child, probably a student, he may be happy if he has been visited at home, at school, by the parents, whereas to an adult person, he may be happy when he has bought a piece of land. So it varies from age to age. In the same way, people can be happy depending on the opportunities available to them, and this differs from chances that they have. Happiness is also based on the personality or the character of an individual. Now we look at happiness in the present situation. The following are the general ideas and views people think about as sources of happiness. So we look at sources of happiness. I don't want you to confuse sources and occasions. Normally students do not differentiate between sources of happiness and occasions of happiness. And so right now we look at sources of happiness. Although there are some occasions that may be sources, but not all occasions are sources of happiness. Therefore, let's look at the sources of happiness. Many people, when they are in a good relationship with God, they share their spiritual life with God through religious activities like praying, fasting, worship God, and this brings happiness to them. People in a good marriage relationship, this makes them happy, especially when there is love, faithfulness, and understanding others. And in such a case, there is emotional feeling. Their emotional feelings are well catered for. Giving birth in a marriage relationship makes people happy. You know that children are a blessing from God, and this shows that there is a continuity of lives of the parents. A family that has children is a happy family. Attaining and attending a good formal education are sources of happiness of people. Educational qualifications like attaining a diploma, a degree or masters, among others, make people happy as they lead to employment and better living standards. To most people, having material wealth or material possession like land, houses, and huge sums of money. They take them as sources of happiness. Apart from giving them prestige, it makes their lives easier as they are in better condition to support themselves and others. Employment is also another source of happiness, especially in popular jobs with attractive income, like managers, lawyers, and accountancy make some people happy. The income they get from their jobs help them to solve their immediate needs and even invest that money. To some people, happiness is all about being popular in the community. For example, the musicians like Bobby Wine, footballers, find joy in pulling huge crowds around them because of their popularity. They feel great and respected, and this gives them joy. Enjoying leisure activities like singing, touring, listening to music brings joy to almost everyone. Such activities refresh the minds and promote a good interpersonal relationship among them. Being in a good health is a source of joy. Does anyone feel happy when they are sick? No. So, being in a good health is a source of joy. It is an avenue through which a person can live longer. Besides, it makes people for individuals to engage in productive activities in order to better their lives. Coming out victorious in stiff competitions makes people happy. For example, winning a highly contested election. You know that this year Uganda will be running elections, electing their leaders right from the presidency to the LC in different capacities. And therefore people are campaigning, are standing for positions. There are those who will go through, who will win elections, and there are those who will lose. And therefore, coming out victoriously in the stiff competition makes people happy. And therefore, those who will win election, it will be a source of happiness. And also their loved ones. Political stability or good governance is a source of joy to many people. When there is a good political climate, it ensures that there is peace and harmony among people. People can do business without being interrupted. No riots, no demonstrations, no tear gas. So political stability or good governance is a source of joy to many people. Observing culture is a source of joy among some people. For example, among the Bagisu of eastern Uganda, they practice imbaru or circumcision. So when they observe that tradition in their culture, it brings joy. It helps to give them identity as a particular group of people. Having a good relationship with the community members makes people happy. The people feel secure because of this. Most of you watch programs on Bukede TV, Agatari Konfufu, and they normally telecast or show families that do not have a good relationship in the community. For example, if somebody is a witch doctor and then they kill children, so the mob will come and send them away from that community. So having a good relationship with the community members makes the people happy. The people feel secure because of this. Attaining economic development is an aspect of happiness today. Economic development such as industrial growth, improved education, health, and roads help to ease life in the community through offering employment and income. So now we look at unhappiness in the present situation. What makes people unhappy? What makes you unhappy? I believe everyone could tell what makes them unhappy. So we look at unhappiness in the present situation. Unhappiness is the feeling or expression of sorrow, sadness, disappointment, or misery by a person or a group of individuals. Now, unhappiness can be expressed in the following ways. Becoming gloomy or moody. You find somebody is gloomy or moody and you ask them, what's wrong? What's happening today? You're not happy. When you look at their face, you will just know that they are not happy. Fainting. Some people psychologically, because of what they're going through, may end up fainting. Probably if they have lost their dear one. So fighting is also an expression of unhappiness. Quarreling, crying, sleeping, remaining silent. You speak to somebody and they are silent, they don't want to talk to you. Jeering, committing suicide, refusing to eat. All these are expressions of unhappiness. Therefore, unhappiness in the present situation is associated with the following. So we look at unhappiness. What causes unhappiness? Unemployment. So if somebody is unemployed despite his qualifications, it makes it difficult for that person to earn a living, especially after spending a lot of time in school or time to attain that qualification. Look at the graduations, the numerous graduations we have in our country. Makerere University, Chambogo, UCU, they graduate students almost for a period of a week. And just imagine somebody has graduated and he or she anticipates to get a job or some form of employment and then ends up on the street. Now that causes unhappiness. Death of a family member or a friend causes sadness brought about by the physical separation and loss of the contribution of the departed. It may be a father, it may be a mother, it may be somebody with a lot of responsibility. He was paying fees for the children, he was buying food, taking care of the children, and then he passes on, and so that causes sadness and brings unhappiness. Marital unfaithfulness, especially adultery, it causes sorrow. Adultery is having sex outside marriage. For those who are married, having an affair outside marriage, that is adultery. It shows lack of commitment in one's relationship, and that is an act of betrayal. Then we have domestic violence, makes people unhappy. This time of the lockdown, we've had so many cases have been registered. Over 320 cases, according to police, were reported to the police because of domestic violence. People running away, husbands leaving their wives running away, and so domestic violence makes people unhappy. It has always led to bodily injuries and sometimes death. Political instability is the cause of unhappiness. It is always associated with the loss of lives, destruction of property, and a feeling of insecurity. When there is a riot or tear gassing in town, shops are broken into and looting, all that kind of stuff leads to unhappiness. People are unhappy because of discrimination based on sex. Discrimination based on sex. For example, in employment, some employment, men may be considered over women, or women may be considered over men. So that kind of discrimination, yet they have the same qualification, may cause unhappiness. Tribe, discrimination based on tribe, religion and status, among others. This becomes the source of insecurity and makes people to feel unwanted and useless in the society. Barrenness or infertility in marriage causes unhappiness in many families. This is especially if one partner desires to have children. We have poverty. Poverty causes unhappiness today. The poor people may fail to provide basic needs for themselves, and this leads to misery. We have exploitation of workers, makes so many people unhappy. In some workplaces, there is low payment compared to the work one is doing. Delayed payment, even when somebody has done the work, is not paid in time. Overworking, all these cause unhappiness. Cultural rigidity causes unhappiness to many people. Some cultures deny the individuals their freedom and lead to suffering in different forms, like circumcision of the female among the Sabines in eastern Uganda. Divorce causes unhappiness. It comes with a feeling of being rejected, thereby causing shame and discomfort. Mob justice causes sadness. Some people are beaten, yet they are innocent. By the time they realize they're innocent, they have injured them, they have killed them. So this one publicly humiliates the suspected criminal, including his or her family members. This means that such people become a laughing stock before the public, hence leading to unhappiness. The existing level of poverty in Uganda today is a major factor causing unhappiness. It renders an individual helpless to acquire basic needs such as food, education, medical care, clothing, and others. We have corruption is also causing unhappiness today. This is a practice where some civil servants misuse facilities meant to benefit the public for their own gains. This is selfishness and greediness that causes suffering to others. We have unwanted pregnancies. They are responsible for unhappiness today. The girl or the woman and the man may not be ready to bear the child for one reason or another. It is even made worse on the side of the woman, who may not know the man responsible for the pregnancy, or when the man denies the responsibility. So this causes a lot of unhappiness and even affects somebody's life. Diseases including HIV, AIDS, malaria, cholera, and others, corona, today are causing unhappiness. The effect of COVID-19 has made the schools to close. and public places to close, and all this causes unhappiness, meaning people no longer go to where they used to be. I know majority of the students and parents are unhappy because schools are closed, and therefore this is a result of continuous body weakness that render an individual helpless to do anything. When somebody is sick, when somebody is unwell, it makes the body weak, and this brings unhappiness to the individual. Now we look at happiness in the African traditional society, ATS. In the African traditional society, there were commonly accepted values that guided people's lives. Therefore, everybody knew and understood what it was meant to be happy. The main ideas about happiness include the following. According to the traditional Africans, happiness meant a state of being contented with what one had or what one was. For example, if one had big chunks of land, that was happiness according to the African traditionalists. Happiness in the ATS was being in harmony or in a good relationship with the spirits, gods, deceased ancestors, neighbors, and tribes. It was believed that one would receive blessing through this kind of relationship. Among the Baganda of central Uganda, if a person was in good relationship with the Dungu, Mukasa, it meant that that was a source of happiness. Happiness in traditional Africa laid in having good harvest and plenty of food. This was an assurance. It was an insurance against famine within the homestead. Happiness in traditional Africa was being in possession of material wealth such as land, cattle, sheep, goat, and others. People with such material were highly respected in the community. In the African traditional society, happiness meant being faithful to customs or to traditions of society. Such traditions created a sense of belonging. Being elderly and wise was considered happiness in ATS. The wise elderly held status in the community because of using their wisdom to guide other members. They were therefore considered the light of the society and given much respect. So you'd find that in families, if families had misunderstandings, or maybe the husband and wife, they would go to a respected elderly person to guide them, to give them counseling. And therefore, age in the African traditional society was considered as an avenue of happiness, because they looked at them as responsible people with wisdom to guide other members. Happiness in African traditional society was understood as having power and prestige. Leaders such as kings, chiefs, clan leaders, and others were given much respect and were therefore happy. Still among the Baganda of central Uganda, the Kabaka has a lot of power and prestige among his subjects, and this causes happiness to him and to the subjects that follow him. Happiness in traditional society was linked to having many children. Children were considered God's blessings to the marriages, sources of labor and insurance against old age, among others. People with children were therefore happy, basing on this ground. In traditional Africa, happiness meant being married. Marriage was compulsory. It was an aspect of social life. Being married therefore meant being loyal to the existing culture. Actually, in traditional society, even if you grew old with gray hair and you were unmarried, they regarded you as a child. So marriage was compulsory, an aspect of social life. In traditional Africa, happiness also meant being faithful to one's role in society. This was because of fulfilling one's duties like being a mother, a father, and a son. So it created unity and the sense of belonging among the members. Being healthy was considered happiness in African traditional society. This was an indication that one was in good terms with the ancestral spirits. It meant that one could live for a longer period. Marrying many wives was a source of happiness for men in traditional Africa. Such men were respected because of the responsibility they had, like feeding the many wives and their children. The respect given to such a man brought them happiness. Happiness in traditional Africa was understood as sharing all the resources within the community, like land. This explains why the poor and the disabled were not considered failures in life. And this prevented selfishness and eliminated suffering among the people, hence creating joy. So you see, in the African traditional society, they did everything together. They shared the harvest together. The success was for all of them. If it was a failure, it was for all of them. So this created a lot of joy and togetherness. Having talents was considered happiness. Such talents like being a medicine man or woman, diviners, and pottery, among others, served the needs of others in various ways, and this helped to create happiness. In traditional Africa, happiness was being prosperous, but not at the expense of others. The prosperity of an individual was for the benefit of all members in the community. So we have some revision questions here that you can attempt after the lesson. Explain the traditional African understanding of happiness. We looked at that. What was meant to be happy in the ATS. Question 3, explain the main ideas about happiness in African past. So now we'll move on to the occasions of happiness in traditional Africa. And I want you to note that we looked at causes of happiness. Now we look at occasions. They were popular moments. Occasions were popular moments when people in African traditional society could come together and express their joy. Such moments were characterized by celebration or feasting, slaughtering of animals and birds, drinking. For example, among the Itesots of eastern Uganda, if they had a good harvest, they celebrated by drinking ajon together, singing and dancing. All these formed part of the occasions. So occasions are the same as events. So events which include the following. Childbirth was an important social event that the traditional Africans celebrated together. Goats and chicken were slaughtered to welcome the new members of the family. Initiation ceremonies such as circumcision among the Bagisu of eastern Uganda, We also have puberty rites. There were also occasions of happiness in traditional Africa. Now, in such ceremonies, the Africans celebrated one's passage from one stage of life to another, like a boy becoming an adult man. The traditional Africans celebrated marriage or introduction ceremonies. Animals and birds such as cows, goats, chicken, respectively, were slaughtered, accompanied with drinking beer, singing and dancing. This was done in bidding farewell to the outgoing member of the family and to recognize the newly acquired status of the two partners. The traditional Africans also celebrated the beginning of a good harvest season. They could offer sacrifices as a way of appreciating or appeasing God for the blessings in form of good harvest. This called for celebration because it guaranteed security against famine. Next, victories in wars, being victorious in a war. It was also celebrated in African traditional society. Victory in wars meant security against loss of lives, loss of property, and foreign domination by other tribes. For example, the wars between Bunyoro and Buganda. In some societies, the enthronement of a king was an occasion that brought joy among the traditional Africans. The enthronement was associated with a series of rituals and feastings. This was because it was a fulfillment of their cultural setup. Housewarming was also an occasion of happiness in traditional Africa. This was a day when the traditional Africans could celebrate the entrance into a new house or a new home. It was associated with eating, slaughtering chicken and goats, singing, drinking, and dancing. Official traditional welcome of twins was an occasion of happiness. The coming of twins in some African understanding signified misfortune to happen in the near future. Because of this, they sacrificed and feasted as a way of trying to cleanse or to wash away the would-be misfortune. This was common among the Baganda of central Uganda. Beer party was also an occasion of happiness in traditional Africa. This was usually organized after a particular task or work had been completed. In such a party, people could eat, drink, sing, and dance. Acquiring land was another occasion of happiness in traditional Africa. This was because land was the most valuable resource in the community's life. Successful hunting, expedition contributed to happiness among the traditional Africans. This was because they believed that the ancestral spirits blessed the successful hunting. Next, children naming or naming of children. It called for celebrations among the African traditionalists. Some names were given basing on the circumstance surrounding the birth. Such names helped the Africans to identify themselves and describe the condition they live. For example, my name WAFULA among the Samia of eastern Uganda, it means rain, meaning that I was born while it was raining. So my name is associated with rain. Some African people were happy on seeing a new moon appearing. For example, among the Khoikhoi of South Africa, the appearance of a new moon showed the presence of their god, and therefore they were happy. So we have revision questions: on what occasion were the people of African Traditional Society happy? Question 2, explain the particular moments in African tradition society. Explain the particular moments in African tradition where people expressed joy. So lastly, we look at causes of unhappiness in traditional Africa. Having a bad relationship with the ancestral spirits caused unhappiness. They believed that this could result in 2 curses. Having poor harvest caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was because of the expected famine that could befall the population. Lacking material possessions such as land, cattle, and goats, among others, caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was a sign of poverty and suffering. Unhappiness in African traditional society was caused by lack of faithfulness or failure to follow the customs or the traditions. In such a case, other members of the community isolated such individuals. Losing wars also resulted into unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was because of its consequences such as loss of lives, foreign domination, and loss of property. Failure to produce children in a marriage caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was because of the belief that the ancestral spirits could have cursed the couple. Next, failure to get married brought about unhappiness to traditional Africans. Single life was never accepted and was considered as going against the culture where marriage was compulsory. The unmarried people were considered social misfits and were always as isolated. An example in Buganda, among the Baganda of central Uganda, a man who remained unmarried, even if he had gray hair, he was considered a child. Death of human beings and even animals caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was because death was taken to be unusual, a curse, and a misfortune. Being sickly caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. Sick people were believed to be in bad terms with ancestral spirits. Failure to show commitment to one's social roles, like being a father, a mother, and others, caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was a disgrace in the life of the community. And social behavior such as witchcraft, theft, and murder also caused unhappiness in traditional Africa. This was a sign of one's disloyalty in serving the needs of the community. That is the end of our lesson. Thank you so much. You'll find our questions later.
For 10 minutes lesson.